Now we need to look at the orbit in greater detail, because we've looked at the nature of the Du channel and what this is, the movement of the qi. But now you've been looking at some exercises to actually develop that substance within the lower dantian that's going to move into the orbit itself. So, as you probably understand, okay, if we go back to our lists that you can probably tell I'm quite fond of by now, the first stage, the yang qi movement, will take place naturally into the Du channel as a byproduct of your practice. So this is the opening and the extension of the nervous system and the opening of the spine that happens under the action of the yang qi as it starts to mobilize into the orbit. So the yang qi that moves through the body, this slightly electrical quality up through the spine into the brain, and then essentially down through the front of the body, takes a slightly different pathway for men and women. Not much different, but a little bit. So in the early stages of the orbit, for the men, it will come up the back through the spine. It will come up over into the head, into the brain, and then come down through the front of the face, through the sinuses, to the throat. When it reaches the region of the chest, it will generally go inside, deeper into the inside of the body and sink down. It means that for men, you don't normally have a lot of sensation around the chest and the front of the abdomen. Instead, it will come into the area of the throat and then go deeper inside to sink back down. The main reason for this is because essentially what will happen when the qi starts to circulate is, in the case of men, it needs to open the Du channel, which is the governor of yang, the governor of this activity inside the body. But after that, it simply needs to return back down to the base of body, to the seat of the yin, to the seat of the jing. So you won't feel it very much on the front. In the case of women, it is a little different, because although it comes up the Du channel in the same way through the spine, then comes over the head, it will move into the chest and then into the area of the breasts before it starts to move around to the solar plexus and then down the front of the body. So the orbit where you see the line drawn up the back and down the front within many diagrams is actually more accurate what will happen in women's bodies. So women get a lot more sensation around the chest and around the front of the body. The reason this orbit is more towards the surface for women is because of the extra seat of the jing around the center of the chest and the connection that has to the uterus down the front of the body. So it will tend to have more of a surface movement. In the case of women, there's also a very reverse direction cycle as well, which I'll discuss in a little while. But for men, that's not so dominant. So that little change is there, that little variation between genders. The yang qi movement, okay, from the dantian, that is required to open this initial orbit. Yeah. From here, we should understand that all of the development you have within the dantian has been what is getting you ready to activate the orbit. So this is essentially the dantian and the qi development that I've been looking at with you within the lessons. So if this is the dantian, and we've gone through the stages of forming the dantian, okay, so that the shell is starting to form. As you probably figured out by now, maybe we could use the metaphors from olden days of this lake of the jing that resides underneath, the lake of the essence. Now, as you know, the essence is comprised of the yin aspect and the yang aspect, as we mentioned previously. We do not really wish to use up the yin aspect of the essence, the bit of your essence that is going on to produce form, growth, and life. We do not really wish to. That is what will start to deplete us. So sometimes if people are engaging in these practices and they're drawing upon the jing, the yin aspect of the jing, the yin essence, this is what starts to cause them to become fatigued or become tired or to wear them down. We want the yang aspect, okay, which is the energy of the essence, because we do not wish to deplete the yin part. So what I'm doing through the practices that I showed you is I'm plucking and extracting the yang from the essence up into the dantian. And this is what is helping to form the type of qi that we require within the dantian. There are other methods for bringing qi to the dantian. There are many different methods and many sources of yang qi. The one I am sharing here is the alchemical method. And the main reason I'm showing the alchemical method is because it's the method that's most closely linked to the microcosmic orbit. The other reason is that if we wish to elevate the microcosmic orbit towards the congenital fluids or the conversion of Jing, we will require the ability to draw our Yang Qi from the essence into the Dantian. For some Qigong systems or Neigong systems, they will put Yang Qi into the Dantian from elsewhere. Those systems essentially take their Yang Qi from the cells primarily. There's another way of forming this energy. But when that goes into the Dantian, it is circulated through the body. But because it is not connected to the essence quite so closely, it means that essentially the circulation of this kind of work will not evolve onto the refinement of Jing. So sometimes people don't understand the difference between what is possible through Qigong and Neigong and what is possible through alchemy. So that conversion of Jing to Qi, to Shen, to emptiness that you sometimes see listed in Taoist books is largely for alchemical training. With regards to Qigong, the Jing has a role to play, and within Neigong the Jing has a role to play, but largely the Yang Qi is used independently of this process. Yeah, so that is one of the key differences. So all of the consolidation of the essence ensures that the Yang energy is there for us to pluck from the Jing. So this is the lifestyle, not burning out too much, making sure you rest enough, not too much sexual activity in the case of men and things like this, so that the Yang energy is there for us to draw upon. Because as I explained at the beginning, one of the errors is if you don't consolidate the Jing, when you go to draw the Yang out of the essence, it's not there. You've used it up for other things. So instead the Yin will convert into Yang to give you something to pluck. What this means is you will be able to fill the Dantian with Yang, but you will do it at the cost of the Yin. So you'll be depleting the Yin aspect of the essence, which we wish to avoid. Yeah. So as long as you understand that, this is what we do. We get the Yang Qi to go into here. The Yang Qi is mixed with the postnatal Qi, the Houtian Qi, which, as I explained to you, if I change colors to make my complicated diagrams not quite so complicated, this comes from the yellow quart, Huang Ting. Yellow quart. Yeah. So what we do is the postnatal Qi is drawn down, okay, so that essentially it is combined and mixed with the Yang Qi within the lower Dantian. So in this way, the congenital and the acquired, or the postnatal and the prenatal, are mixed together. And I liken this to people, like I say, to like epoxy resin, where these two parts are mixed together to create some kind of reaction within the Dantian. The result of this is a building of Qi and a thickening of Qi within the lower Dantian. So now we start to get this slight thickening, this viscosity starting to appear within the lower Dantian. The mixing practice that I showed you will start this process, and it will aid you in bringing the Dantian towards that magical landmark of 15% capacity, which will assist in the activation of the Dantian. So as I said, there are other methods, and some of you, if you are watching this or listening to this, who study with me elsewhere, and you study Qigong and Neigong with me, you will know that there are other methods to do this that I normally teach you, but this is the alchemical version, the alchemical way to do it. Yeah. So from here, the building of the Qi and the thickening of the Qi, this all contributes to the Dantian and the Qi development that we're looking for. And I told you about the signs that you'll know when the Dantian is getting to that stage. From here, if this is a lower abdomen, what we start to do then is turn the Dantian to roll this Qi within the space. Yeah? To roll and turn the Qi over within the abdomen. And this is known as the churning of Qi. Churning as if you're churning, cream from milk or something like this, and churning it. And what this starts to do, this roll within this area, is once again it contributes to the thickening and the preparing of the Yang Qi for it to move. The lesser microcosmic orbit practice will contribute to this. And this is a vital part of the microcosmic orbit practice to get this rolling over to take place within the abdomen. And as I said, it's not done by rolling your muscles or any clever control of the abdominal wall. It's from the Dantian turning the Qi over. All of this creates a density of qi in the lower abdomen, which is going to serve as a further anchor. The denser this qi is in the abdomen from your practice, from the rolling and thickening, the less likely it is for your energy to shoot up through the body when you start to open the Du channel. Yeah? It's like a counterweight on the bottom. So some methods will try to draw qi immediately into the spine, and it is possible to do, even forcefully, but it will send too much to your head. You will start to move into fight or flight, you get stress, headaches, and all sorts of things. And like I say, not hundreds, well, it is hundreds, not thousands, but certainly a lot of people have actually had these problems from practice, and more, especially with social media where everyone's communicating, more and more of this is coming to light, that people have had problems from practice. And largely it's because they haven't built the density of qi in the bottom of the body to anchor that process so they don't enter into this sort of stress state. Okay, that's the first part of it. The other part of this, all to do with Dantian and qi development, what I've been teaching you, is it causes the qi in the Dantian to spill over. It's kind of like you're filling the cauldron, right? You're filling the cauldron up. Because remember, they talked about the Dantian as if it was what they call a ding, a three-legged cauldron, these things that you often see incense burnt in temples. And what happens is this ding is built and it's bubbling, yeah? And partially it's being cooked from underneath, remember, by the lu, which is the furnace. Yeah? So the ding and the lu. Now, what is the furnace? Well, remember, the furnace essentially is the yang energy that sits at the perineum that creates that warmth. This is why it's called a furnace. And this is contributing to the preparing of the substance within the lower Dantian cauldron. The ingredients we're putting in are from the postnatal qi, as well as from the yang essence, and this is getting it ready. At some stage, it's going to start to spill over. How do I indicate that? Some little drops, maybe. Excuse my drawing. Will start to spill over out of the cauldron. And at this stage, we are ready to move to the third part of the orbit practice, which is to actually draw the qi into the Du channel. Draw the qi into the Du channel. So into the back. We want to have opened or prepared the clipping passes as best we can, and we've done all this work with the lower part of the body. Now we want to pull it into the spine. We don't do it with our imagination, and we don't do it with an excess of force. It's just like a suggestion, like a little method that I'll show you, just to suggest that qi to go in. If the qi is not ready, it will not move into the spine. If it is ready, in it goes. And it will enter into the spine and start the process of the Du channel opening. Yeah? It enters through a small gate called Wei Lu. Yeah, Wei Lu. Wei Lu. This is the gateway at the bottom of the Du channel. The gateway at the bottom of the Du channel. It is essentially the tailbone. That's what it is. The tailbone becomes the entrance point, the gateway for the Du channel, within which we draw the yang qi to move it into this channel to activate the orbit. Yeah? Now we have various aspects and stages to the orbit, and that's what I want to look at a little bit now. Once we pull this qi into the spine, or we suggest it, it's like we tease it out, we tug it into the Wei Lu. If it is ready, it will start to move into the spine, and initially it will take you through that process I spoke about, where it will activate and stretch and mobilize the qi through the body. It's a very clear and tangible experience when it starts to arise. From here, the next part of the process is to understand what actually takes place within the body during the orbit. Because if you remember, I said originally there was like a figure of 8 loop that takes place naturally within all of us. That figure of 8 loop, where it comes up the spine and down inside and up the front and down inside, is not ended by what we're doing. Because, and this is another thing that sometimes causes confusion. Maybe I'll put here, there are multiple orbits taking place. Just like if you had sort of a motorway that had a slow lane and a fast lane and a lay-by lane where people break down in or something like that. You have all of these vehicles traveling the same way at different speeds. It is the same for the body within the channel system. So as I said at the beginning, there is a cycle of qi that moves over a 24-hour period, according to the movement of the sun, the influence of the sun. There is a movement within the microcosmic orbit that takes place over the course of a month, according to the lunar cycle. There are also orbits that take place in both directions, and there is that figure of 8 cycle that's taking place. The one cycle that is missing, if you like, in the majority of people once they get to a certain age, is that very strong yang qi circulation that takes place up the back and down the front. And this is the one we want to emphasize. But I want to make clear that you're not ending the other cycles. You don't wish to end the natural orbits in the body. We never want to end anything that is natural for our body. We just emphasize certain things. Now we need to learn how to use that yang qi spark in the right way, that thing we've extracted, that qi from the dantian, to change the efficiency of the body's functioning. Yeah? Now, if we look at what we're doing with regards to the nervous system, this is normally the first change that arises. The first change that arises. The nervous system, when it opens at the level of the Du channel, as I said, this creates life or activity inside the body, inside the tissues. All of the channels open up and life mobilizes through the insides of the body. Within the internal arts, they say that we must find the internals. The internal mechanism must come to life. The internal mechanism is the mobilization of the tissues according to qi, which is the movement of qi through the Du channel. So in order to find the internal mechanisms, whether you're talking about Qigong or Tai Chi or Neigong, the Du channel must be open. The Ren channel is different. When the Ren channel starts to open, instead of producing life or activity, yang, it produces yin, calmness. Yeah? Okay? Maybe you could say centeredness. Centeredness. When the front part of the body opens, it is like the nervous system, or the yang qi moves through this area. It is like the nervous system moves almost permanently out of fight or flight. Okay? It is almost impossible for you to panic or stress when the Ren channel opens. So this is one of the clearest signs for people. Stress, panic, adrenaline experiences, anxieties, those things start to fade. It does not mean that you're not capable of having an emotional experience or something is not upsetting or maybe make you angry or something like that, but it doesn't create that panic response, that heightened loss of control. The Ren channel opening, for me, this is one of the clearest signs. It means even during the biggest emotional upheaval or psychiatric disturbance or whatever that's affecting your life, you're still okay, still centered. It's like your mind recognizes that it's just life stuff. That all happens as the Ren channel opens up and sinks down. It is tricky for the Ren channel to open. And the reason it is tricky, it's quite difficult, is because first of all, the Du channel has to be open, but you have to open the Du channel while having a strong anchor on the bottom. And that's what people miss. That's very, very important. If the Du channel opens and there is no strong anchor on the bottom, no consolidation of qi, no strength of the dantian, no anchoring of the breath low down, everything I've been doing with you and trying to teach you, then what will happen is when the Du channel opens, instead of entering the Ren channel, it will just enter into the head and start moving you into a more stressed state, more stressed state, more stressed state. I've known people who do this through Neigong or Qigong, and every time they practice, the qi moves into the Du channel and up it goes. But because there's not enough consolidation, it doesn't make that jump. It's like there's no counterweight to pull it back down. So the Ren channel never opens. So people just get excitable. They think they're getting more energy, but actually they're getting more stressed, which is not necessarily the same thing. You know, it's burning up the yin. The magpie bridge is required. Remember the connection of the tongue to the roof of the mouth. Okay, and that little electric sensation that comes into the tip of the tongue shows that it's open. And this combined with the development of the dantian will start to open the Ren channel. When the Ren channel starts to open, like I say, you will move to that place of centeredness, to neutrality. Sometimes people call equanimity with regards to relationship of your mind to your emotional makeup. Yeah. This had obvious uses for practitioner of spiritual arts, because they didn't want to emotionally suppress, that wasn't wise, or emotionally ignore, but they wanted to be emotionally aware and emotionally centered, so that those things would take place. Any mental disturbance would take place around them, but still the mind was centered. And this was the basis of the Ren channel. So essentially with the microcosmic orbit, in the majority of cases, we're taking a natural process that's unfolding within the body anyway, and just heightening it, making it stronger, making it run more efficiently. This ties in with the idea from Taoism that ultimately good health is just the efficiency of the body. Like the more efficient the body, the healthier you are. The more efficiently the mind runs, the clearer the thought. The more efficient you are with regards to the entire of your system, the closer you are towards a state of enlightenment. That efficiency might not come from, building more muscles or building more strength or building more intelligence. It's based upon the mechanics of Jing, Qi, and Shen. How efficiently are these energetics moving and developing within the body? Now, for the movement of Jing within the microcosmic orbit, this is really where you're starting to get into the deeper parts of the process. Yeah? So, within the cycle, the normal cycle, we can say that from heaven, I mentioned this a little bit earlier at the beginning, that from heaven, what comes down is one of the yang sparks, the essence of from heaven, essence from the brain ultimately. So there is a substance that moves down from the brain, a form of Jing that moves into the body. From earth, we can say that there is a form of Jing that moves up. Yeah? A form of Jing that moves up. And the two, when they start to combine with each other, when they start to mix in the center, create the potential for life and potential for health. So sometimes within books, when you read about essence and kidneys and Jing, they'll talk about the kidney yang being the warming aspect of this whole system. And they talk about kidney yin being the essence. And they talk about the Jing residing in the kidneys and then coming to the base of the body, maybe the perineum, and then converting into the dantian. But not so often do they talk about the little movement that comes down from the brain and drips down through the body. Now in Qigong, they understood the importance of this because they knew that there was two key pathways for this movement of energy. The first of these was that it ran down and it entered into the saliva. So there was a lot of teachings within Qigong about swallowing the saliva, running your tongue around the inside of the mouth to build saliva, then swallowing it down, things like this. These were considered like lesser medical practices for trying to harness some of that energy. And it's not amazingly strong, but it's enough just to grab some of that natural yang essence that moves down from the brain. But the second pathway of the yang essence from the brain, from the heavens, if you like, was more important. It was far more dominant. And it was the pathway that played a lot greater importance within our chemical training. And this was the movement that came from the brain down through the front of the spine and then was said to drip or fall like rain through the body down towards the pool of Jing at the base of the body. So the metaphors, the symbolism, the imagery they use are much like the environment. They're talking about rain falling from heaven. This is these drips that contain the yang qi that run through the inside of the body and go down to the lake at the base of the body, the water where the Jing resides in earth. So when these two mix together, when the earth receives the heavens, then what happens is the essence kicks into life, and this is the spark that causes everything to function. The idea is that the Jing from your kidneys, the yin essence, is not going to doing anything. It's not going to kick into life. It's not going to spark and generate creation until it's received the blessings of heaven. And this is very much an idea with, once again, the macrocosm and microcosm reflecting one another. Because according to the Taoist tradition, then there would need to be a blessing from heaven for anything to take place in life, anything within existence. And this is where it is matched within the body. So for alchemists, people who practice Neidan, it is especially important that they understand that you have this spark that moves down from the brain down to stimulate the Jing into life. Because it's that we wish to harness as efficiently as we can through the microcosmic orbit practice. This is the basis of the microcosmic orbit proper. The stages prior to this have been about opening the spinal system, opening the channels, getting the body prepared, opening the Ren so everything is more centered. But now the real work begins, because now we move from Qigong, we could say, energetic skill, to actual alchemy, Neidan, conversion of something. So what they try to do is they take the yang spark initially from Earth. Okay. So where has that yang spark come from? It's come from two places. One, it's come from the yang aspect of the essence. That's one part of it, the yang aspect of the essence. And the second part is from heaven. So from the mind. And when these two things come together, what it produces is the yang qi that we need to pull into the dantian. So that little thing that they're extracting, the Jinghua, as it's sometimes called, Jinghua, meaning the sort of highest level, the expression of Jing at its highest potential, that which they're extracting from the Jing comes from these sources. All of the settling of the Jing, like I've already spoken about, the consolidation of the Jing, the quietening of it, the moderation of your behavior, is to ensure that that yang essence is there for you to extract. If it's not there for you to extract, then you can't extract it. And like I've already said, at worst, if you try to extract it, you'll burn up the yin instead. So all of that consolidation was there for the yang Jinghua, the yang qi, to be here, to be extracted into the dantian. This process is considered like plucking crops. So they'll talk about, remember this is a field, okay, a place of cultivation of crops. What happens within the field is people plant crops. And they say it's like sowing golden coins. They actually say within some of the classics, golden meaning it has a lot of value, and the coins represent like a higher spiritual version of seeds ultimately. Because if you look at the images of the people working in that area, they're actually planting crops, planting these into the ground. When they start to furrow that soil and work it, then they can actually start to pluck the yang qi out of the essence, like plucking the crops out of the ground. So we harvest this qi into the dantian over a period of time. It is said within alchemical teachings that if somebody were to solely do this, if the Jing was completely prepared, completely settled, it was ready for your work, there was no disturbances, and you were living solely working on this process, it would take 100 days. 100 days. And they call this the 100 days establishing the foundations. Now, if somebody is leading a normal life, and having normal experiences and interacting with people, having a relationship, having a job, things like that, then obviously that 100 days is extended out. So that doesn't mean that you need 100 days in order to achieve the 15%. That's not true. The 100 days they're referring to, if you were practicing solely, was to fill the dantian, to complete this process of putting the yang qi into the dantian area. For somebody who leads a normal life, you're looking at a number of years. Okay, it's going to be stretched out over a period of time to fully complete this part of the process. So it's a fairly lengthy process, Now this substance is drawn into the dantian, the yang qi is taken from the essence and then stored within the dantian field. What happens is then it is pulled into the microcosmic orbit. It is circulated through the Du and the Ren in the same way that the yang qi was previously. So we could say that it's to do with gradients. So maybe your amount of qi is like a graph. Let's say something like that, right? If this is, what's that? I don't know, let's call that no yang qi. That would be problematic. You must have something in order to exist. Then when you've built a certain amount, like this amount maybe, something like this, then what happens? Then this will start to open the Du and the Ren according to the yang qi description that I've already given you. So it will open the nerves, it will open the channels, it will open the Du and the Ren. It is still the same substance, it is still that yang qi, but it is not enough to start moving towards what we call refinement or alchemical transformation until it gets to, I don't know, it's a diagram, but comparatively about that. At this stage, when enough is built, when there's enough thickening, there's enough extraction of the yang essence, the Jinghua, there's enough churning of the qi within the body, now when it starts to move through, now what it starts to do is create conversion. And this really is the basis of where alchemy comes into the microcosmic orbit. So what is this conversion? Let's look a little bit at it. So, with the movement of the yang qi, essentially what happens is it goes up through the spine when there is enough, okay, and then enters the brain. Enters the brain. Now in the early stages, when the yang qi is entering the brain, before it moves down through the Ren channel, what it will do is lead to clarity of mind, shall we say. Maybe an increase in your mental faculties, something like this, providing you've done it healthily and there is enough of an anchor. It's just like more energy goes to the brain and you can think better, you can think clearer, your problem-solving abilities go up and your insight into things starts to increase. Sometimes it gets so clear within your mind from the microcosmic orbit type work that it can almost appear like you have a very deep intuition, almost like a psychic ability or something like this. But in actual fact, some people mistake it for that. But generally what happens is your brain is functioning at a higher level. So you're more efficient at picking up little signs and reading little body language clues and things like that and putting together the bigger picture. So you tend to gain more insight into things that are happening. Because that insight is then stored somewhere within your brain, a kind of inner tuition comes out, intuition, lessons from inside that tell you about things, that help you understand something. And it's quite strange. Someone who's done a lot of this work, like I say, they can almost appear as though they are psychic, but they're just able to read the situation because their brain, the clarity of their mind is functioning at a very, very high level. Beyond this, what starts to happen is when a high enough degree of yang qi has entered the brain, then the glands inside the brain start to produce something that drips down through the body, and this is called the jade fluid, the jade fluid. Some traditions actually call it the immortal medicine, which I quite like, the xianyang. Just two different terms, and most people would probably know it as the jade fluid. Now this fluid that is produced inside the body essentially is a chemical that the brain produces from the yang qi, and it appears within Taoist teachings, esoteric Buddhist teachings, and Hindu teachings, and probably other traditions as well, but these are the ones I'm familiar with. And this substance, this fluid that is produced, will move into the mouth and into the saliva in the same way that yang qi from heaven previously did. But if you think about what you're doing, you're recycling the yang qi, because this essence would come down from the brain towards the base of the body and then be used up through activity, mental disturbance, sexual desire, things like that, all of these kind of things. And what I'm starting to do by consolidating the jing, moving it into the dantian to store it, and then circulating it through the system, is I'm recycling it so that there is a higher degree for me to use. So instead of just burning it up through life, and that's what will happen. If you don't have a cultivation method, it will get burnt up. That's what will happen. If I don't have a way to extract it into the dantian, it's not like it gets stored anywhere. It just gets used. The body will use it up through various things. If you're not active enough, it'll get used up through mental activity. The body is very good at burning up energy. So when I extract and take it to the dantian, that's the battery storehouse for this energy. Then when I learn to circulate it, instead of being burnt up, it goes up to the brain, to the mind, where it starts to combine with the natural movement of yang from here, and then the strength of this substance goes up. Yeah? The jade fluid, when it starts to get produced, will taste of qi, for want of a better term. It will taste of qi. Some people don't know that qi has a taste. Yeah? That taste is sweet. People who study Chinese medicine and understand about the flavors and how they affect the body won't be too surprised at that. But qi tastes sweet, not sour, not bitter. That's the natural, neutral taste of energy. So when this substance, this yang spark, starts to move into the saliva, all of a sudden the taste of your saliva will start to get sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. At the lower levels, it's like a little bit like maybe you just had a sugary drink or something like that. And then it gets further and further until it tastes like something like honey or molasses or something. And then at the very high levels, when you've managed to build a lot of it, it's the sweetest thing you've ever tasted. It's kind of crazy. It's like Coca-Cola with another load of sweetening flavors on top. It's very, very clear. This also produces a thickness in the saliva as well. So this will start to build. And a lot of people will experience this in alchemy, even sometimes accidentally, when they manage to extract the substance of the dantian up towards the brain, and the result is it produces a chemical that comes down into the body. that you get this kind of thickening fluid that appears inside the body. Now, within Taoist teachings, the idea was to swallow the substance, but of course, and swallow it down. Obviously, don't spit it out or something, don't waste it. But at the same time, that wasn't the most important part of it, because you're only experiencing through the jade fluid the byproduct of it. It's kind of the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. The most important part of this jade fluid doesn't go into the saliva. What it does is it runs down inside the body. You won't taste this. It will move down through the inside, and it will start to move back down towards the jing, back down towards the essence at the base. As it travels through the body, essentially it is a highly refined form of yang qi mixed with essence, okay, that is moving through your system. And as it does that, it will start to convert the body, okay? And probably the most controversial aspect of it is it will actually build the jing. Some people don't believe it's possible to build the jing. Now, think about what is building in your jing. There are two components to the jing, remember, yin and yang. The yang qi is going up, okay, or the yang aspect of the essence, and then that's moving back down. So what you are building is the yang aspect of the jing. That is what you're building, not the yin aspect. The yang aspect of your jing, remember, is the part that is related to energy. And I mean this in the kind of most literal sense, like energetic, how much vitality, vibrance, energetic activity within the body, literal energy. Okay, that's what it is for. It is the part of the jing that is the essence for conversion and catalyst for transformation in the body. It is not replacing the yin aspect of the jing. The yin aspect of the jing is the part that we talked about already, talking about, life, growth, development, death, cell repair, stuff like that. So that part of the essence cannot be replaced. So it's not possible to age backwards or get the jing back that you had when you were a child or something like that. You're still going to be using up the yin aspect of the jing, but you are able to develop more energy and more vitality through this practice, so that you will maintain a youthful vigor, a youthful energy, even as you physically age. What will slow down the aging process, though, slow it down, get that right, but not speed it up, slow down the aging process, is because there is more yang jing, your yin essence doesn't have to convert to replace the yang essence, remember. Because if you are overactive and you use up the yang aspect of your essence, which you can do quite quickly, it's not that hard, you just have to have a few fun nights or something like that, and then the yang essence starts to get used up, then the yin aspect of essence, yin will convert into yang, and that will burn up the yin very, very quickly. Within Chinese medicine, this can be the basis of something like yin deficiency with empty heat or something like that, if you know what that means. But essentially that happens over a period of time, and this is what speeds up, or apparently speeds up, the aging process, so the breaking down of the body. If there is a lot of yang jing, then there's no need for the yin to convert into it. So what yin essence you have can be preserved and used in a sensible fashion so that it transforms the speed that it is supposed to. And remember, within Taoist teachings, that's 120 years that the yin aspect of the essence is supposed to last. So the longevity uses of this are quite major. But I wanted to clear that up because, the argument of can you replace jing, can you not? Two camps are both kind of right, because you can replace some aspect of the jing, but some aspect you cannot, the yin aspect. As it starts to go down through the body to convert the body's functions, the other thing that it starts to do is it leads more of this yang essence to the organs and to the channels. When this yang essence enters into the organs and the channels, then it starts to replenish and repair them. It's like a really strong tonification for the organ functions. Now, to understand the organ functions and everything associated with them in Chinese medicine, if you're not familiar with them, I would go away and find a book or the internet and look up Zhang Fu theory. This is the theory of the yin and yang organs of the body in Chinese medicine. If you're already familiar with them, you'll understand why it can have such a transformative influence upon every aspect of you if that yang qi is led to the organ system and led to the channels. because the organs aren't just literally the organs, although it would be awesome if your liver and your kidneys got better, but also there are psychological components attached to the organs. There are tissue components attached, there are body fluids attached to it. There are all these different things that are governed by the Zangfu organs, and they receive this energy when the Yang Qi or the Yang essence moves from the jade fluid down into the body. At later stages of alchemy, there is another process that I'm not going to talk about too much in this course, because it's another process, which is basically to do with what they call gathering the 5 elements, or sometimes gathering the 5 qi. You'll hear this talked about, gathering the 5 elements or gathering the 5 qi. And ultimately, what it means is to draw the excess yang essence or yang energy that's been produced from this practice, that's radiating around the organs and gathering it together as another source of fuel within the body. This is the main alchemical substance that is drawn towards the yellow court region of the body, the Huangting, the solar plexus. So what happens is this center receives the excess yang energy that's radiating off of the organs, but you can't do that until you have been through this process. The microcosmic orbit has to be opened first, and sometimes I see it switched. I see people trying to gather the 5 agents or 5 qi before the micro. It doesn't work that way. The microcosmic orbit has to be there in order for this excess yang essence to convert the function of the body, so they are at a high level, so that these energies can be gathered in towards the solar plexus. So for alchemical practitioners or people working in this way, this is another function of the microcosmic orbit. It prepares you for that stage of the training. So what they say within the body, or within alchemical texts, and I've been trying to explain this to people for a while, and I'm actually not sure I did the best job of this within some of my writings. What I wrote was accurate, but maybe I didn't make it clear enough, because some of the feedback was there was a bit of confusion around it. I don't mind admitting I'm not the most experienced writer. It's not a natural thing for me, so I will try to clear up this now. Is they say within alchemy that you have this conversion of Jing to Qi to Shen within the body, yeah? Now, what confuses people is it sounds like, and I understand why, if I convert my Jing to Qi, don't I have less Jing? That's what it sounds like, right? If I convert my Qi to Shen, don't I have less Qi? And this is something that causes a lot of confusion, because why would you want to convert your essence, that thing that is the fuel of your life, to energy and then spirit? And if you're looking at it that way, then yeah, I wouldn't really want to. What it would mean is maybe you have a nicely refined mind, but your body will break down and your life will be shorter. And that's not something we really want to do. I mean, really, if we look at Jing, Qi, Shen in this way, Jing to Qi to Shen, then you're kind of doing that all the time anyway. That's the natural thing that happens, is your essence is being used up to produce functional activities of the body, which is Qi, which is then converting to activity of the mind or spirit if you're a cultivator. I mean, that's a normal process. So this isn't really what the Jing, Qi, Shen conversion means. It's a little bit more intricate. The Jing, Qi, Shen conversion is this that I've already spoken about, the microcosmic orbit. And how is this? Well, the Jing, the yin aspect of Jing, we can't do anything about. Like I said, the only thing we can do is we can preserve it a little bit better by not allowing it to convert into the yang, because we're producing enough of that anyway. So because that stressor is taken off the yin aspect of Jing, it can build up, okay, or it can preserve. The yang aspect of Jing, okay, is circulating through the body and then moving into the Dantian and moving back down towards the essence. So we are recycling it through our practice. It moves into the base of the body to become that yang essence that we pluck into the Dantian. So now what we have is a cycle taking place, right? Okay, what is the Dantian called? It's called the sea of Qi, the sea, the ocean, yeah? The ocean is warmed, okay? It's warmed by various things, okay? It's warmed by the fires, it's warmed by our activity. And what happens is that turns the water into mist, so they say. So the water starts to rise like clouds up towards the top of the body. When it reaches like the water cycle that you learned at school, right? And then the clouds, what they do is they condense and then they turn into rain that runs back down to the base of the body, to the the C once again, back to the Dantian. This is this, the Jing, okay, warming it so that the yang energy is extracted towards the brain, where it starts to thicken, like rain falling from cloud. It's condensing, yeah? The reason they say it's condensing is because the ethereal electrical energy of this yang qi produces more of the fluid, which drips down through the body, back down towards the Jing. When that happens, you have more yang, which produces more vitality, because that aspect of your Jin that is producing energy, now there is more of it. It's not being burnt up. It's being extracted, stored, and converted. This essentially is qi. So it's not the same qi you would get from your food. It's not the same qi you would get from your air, although that's a component of it, because remember of the mixing the solar plexus and the Dantian energy. But the qi they're talking about is the vitality that is created by the extraction of the yang from the essence, right? This water wheel cycle. What happens is that extra vitality has to go somewhere. It has to go somewhere. So where will it go? One, it will go to mind for most people. That's where it will go, to the mind. So this means a higher degree of mental activity. Mental activity, yeah? For some people, or some traditions, this became intelligence. They would use this process to stimulate the intelligence, and I mean like the intellectual intelligence. A lot of Confucian Qigong was based upon this, because Confucianism was kind of an internal tradition mixed with the idea of producing the perfect gentleman, if you like, or something that's a refined character to exist in high society. Maybe that's not doing it justice, but that was a large part of it, that kind of idea. So what happens when that vitality reached the mind and created intelligence, that was moving them towards that practice? And these days, there are still remnants of that, because you get wisdom Qigong, intelligence Qigong. What these are doing is they're playing with this process to take this energy back to the mind. But there's something else we can add into this process, which is stillness. And this is something that I want to talk about a bit later. Stillness. So mental and emotional stillness. The stillness comes from, first of all, let's say meditation. And we'll explore that a bit later, but meditation. The second thing the stillness comes from, on a really basic level, let's not underestimate it though, is the Ren channel. It's the Ren channel, right? Because we already said if you open the Ren channel on the front of the body, then you start to calm down. Okay, the emotions, the mind settle, you're out of fight or flight. Okay, it's not enough to produce a profound meditative state, but it's calming you, it's calming you, it's calming you. You'll get to a point when the Ren channel opens, when the mind feels very, very still. Maybe not completely, but a lot more calm, a lot more settled than it was previously. Now, if the vitality from the Yang Qi is passed through the filter of stillness, instead of moving to mind, it moves to Shen. And Shen is spirit. It is that part of your being that leads to something higher, something more profound, something that is higher than you, okay? Maybe you could say that seed of consciousness that is the true you, the sort of the thing that is aimed for within all spiritual traditions or religions or meditation practices. If there is no stillness, the Yang Qi stimulates the mind. So if people enter into microcosmic orbit type practice to gather this Qi, but they don't have a meditation practice, there's nothing wrong with that, but it will go to mind. So it can mean more mental activity, which is fine as long as you have something to use it up on. But for people who don't have any expression for that energy, maybe no physical expression, maybe no intellectual expression, it can be a little bit frustrating because all of a sudden there's all this extra energy buzzing around in there. And maybe you could argue that that's where the I Ching comes in. If you want something to burn up your mental energy, study the I Ching, the classic of change. I guarantee you'll be burning that up within no time, because that's really confusing. But for people who wanted cultivation, once they pass this extra vitality through the lens of stillness, then it nourishes spirit instead of mind. Yeah? And this is really where people can start to elevate the microcosmic orbit to the higher levels, to the spiritual levels of practice. So this process is Jing to Qi to Shen. So hopefully you can see that I'm not really burning up through my Jing to do this, because I'm recycling a particular aspect of it to create the Qi. It's not the standard conversion of Qi that takes place from Jing within the body. It's very special because it's done according to this jade fluid. This is the orbit, the water cycle of the orbit, if you like. So far then in the microcosmic orbit, we've achieved stage 1. Well, we talked about the stage 1 anyway, don't know where you're at, but the Yang Qi circulating through those channels. And then secondly, we've talked about what we might call the conversion of Jing, conversion of essence. That's, everything I was just talking about then. Jing Qi Shen and the extraction of this Yang Qi. And as I said, it's really just, like a further advancement on Yang Qi. It's like the more it builds, the more it thickens, the more it churns. It's like it becomes a deeper substance that moves through the body to create this conversion. Sometimes people don't know why they want the conversion. Like, why do you want the body to function at a higher level? Which to me never seemed like a strange thing, because why would you not want your body to function at a higher level in a healthier stage, a healthier way? That makes sense to me. But for a lot of meditators, not really interested. And I've seen some people trying to engage with alchemy and like ignoring this part of the process. But look at what I was saying with regards to the organs, for people who don't understand why you would want the body to function better. Now we want to produce enough energy within the Zhang Fu organs, through nourishing them, that there's this extra energy that radiates in this form of qi that can be harvested, these five ingredients, right? We also want the congenital fluid to move up towards the brain to create various reactions here. The main reason is all of those things you're producing become substances that we use to formulate the pill, the Dan, the spiritual pill, the elixir. So the Dan that goes to the Dantian, okay? What happens is, within high-level alchemy, super high-level alchemy, that they convert the body to such a high level of functioning that when combined with the high level of skill that's attained within the mind, they say that Xing and Ming, or life, manifests in your physical body, and Xing is nature, manifests from the results of your practice. Xing and Ming come together. And when they come together, by absorbing all the ingredients of the pill and using the fuel of the state of your mind as a sort of crucible within which this pill is cooked, then what happens is somebody starts to move towards an enlightened state. So it's the basis within alchemical traditions of how they took you to the highest levels of realization. So for that reason, the microcosmic orbit was very, very important, and how they were using the body to produce this extra energy, this Yang Qi. Third stage, and fourth, I will talk about a little bit, but I don't think that it's majorly important to understand right now. I think that maybe just a vague understanding is good, but I think for this kind of work, definitely it's more of an in-person class. Maybe that's something we need to go see a teacher at that stage, because sometimes some things just, still need that in-person touch, right? These kind of stages, 1 and 2, are going to take a while anyway, so don't worry, you have enough work to do. The conversion of Jing to produce this extra, so we say, let's call it a spark, this extra energy. There are all sorts of alchemical terms for it to do with dragon and tiger copulating, and fire and water interchanging, and the raven and the hare intermingling, and there's all these different terms, right? And all of these different things discuss subtleties of processes involved in this action, but ultimately what I've done here is give you an overview of the process and try to strip off some of the jargon so you can see what's going on. Some of the metaphorical language is not there. I could take this same process and explain it metaphorically using the symbology with an alchemy text, but I'm not sure of the usefulness of that. Sometimes it's better to just have a really clear understanding. This spark, this extra energy that's created that produces the jade fluid, the Jinghua we're talking about, and produces a jade fluid and everything converts the body, still builds and builds and builds within the body, within the Dantian, till it gets to a stage that we can say the congenital fluid starts to move. The congenital fluid. When the congenital fluid starts to move, this is like warm, bubbling fluid that travels through that orbit. It's not the warm, bubbling fluid some people will have felt before and thought they felt it, because sometimes people will mistake like a tingling in the spine as a bubbling or something. It's different from that. It's incredibly thick. It's like it is like a warm soup, if you like, that starts to circulate around inside the body. It is very clear to feel traveling up into the brain and very clear to feel running down inside the body. It does not travel down the line of the Ren, it sinks through the inside. The congenital fluid, combined with the stillness of meditation, were two of the substances, the foods, that were used to feed the golden embryo at the higher level of alchemical practice. So the golden embryo being ultimately the spirit, the energy of Shen that is harmonized, that harnessed within the body. It is then fed from two sources. Fed from earth, that's the congenital fluid that circulates through the channels, and fed from heaven, that is the state of your mind. And when the mind and the body, or the congenital fluid, the Shantian Jing, and the state of your mind from meditative training come together, then this produces the food that feeds this golden embryo. And this is how we nurture that at high level alchemical practice. But as I said, I think it's enough just to have a rough understanding of that for your training. What I am going to talk about a little bit more though, because it's not completely sequential, this one, is the circulation of light. What they call the Fa Lun wheel, the wheel of law, or the self-winding wheel of law, sometimes, or something like this. It implies a spiritual law, a kind of a law of the universe, the esoteric laws of existence that are manifest within the light that circulates through the channel. So the light that is found, initially is found within the upper dantian, where enough of the qi is converted to shen. So as I said previously, if you have stillness and you pass the yang qi that is produced through the lens of stillness, instead of nourishing the mind, it nourishes spirit. At this stage, what starts to happen is a light starts to radiate out and appear within the mind's eye. It looks like, at first, like the whole of the skull cavity starts to light up. In some people, the stillness is not absolute, so there is still some mental activity. So the result is that the light will flicker. It's like a strobe light going off in the head. But if the mental activity is quietened, okay, it reaches a state of equanimity within you with regards to yin and yang, then the white light starts to stabilize and starts to become stronger and then starts to condense to a point. And this point is what they call the white moon that shines within the head, or sometimes white moon on the mountain peak. The mountain being your body, okay, the peak being your head, and the white light being the moon, because it looks like a full moon that radiates in the center of the head. This light is then circulated around inside the channel system in a very specific manner, a very specific fashion. And what I'll do to conclude this course is I'll talk a little bit about how that happens. But first of all, now that we have a little bit of an overview of the microcosmic orbit, because I wanted to talk about the practical levels, the yang qi, and then the higher levels, conversion of jing qi to shen within the body, and then just give you an understanding of how these other two work. Now we need to look at how we actually move that substance into the Du channel, which is the next part of our training.